Imagine opening your eyes to discover you are trapped inside a brutal, hyper-minimalist concrete nightmare. There are no windows, no doors, and no escape routes. There is only a massive, gaping rectangular void right in the absolute center of the room that pierces straight down through the ceiling and the floor into a seemingly infinite abyss. This is the Vertical Self-Management Center, colloquially known by its terrified inmates simply as the Hole. The rules of this dystopian facility are engineered to bring out the absolute worst of human nature through systemic starvation and psychological torture. Every single day, a massive floating platform loaded with an incredibly lavish Michelin star-level feast descends from the very top, known as Level 0. On Level 1, the two lucky inmates get first access to the pristine, untouched food, gorging themselves on wine, meats, and desserts. But the platform only stops on each floor for a mere 2 minutes before descending further down into the dark. As it drops, the food is violently scavenged, stepped on, and devoured by the upper floors. By the time it reaches the double digits, the feast is reduced to disgusting, mangled scraps. By the time it hits the triple digits, there is absolutely nothing left but empty plates, shattered glass, and broken bones. Our protagonist, a naive man named Goreng, wakes up on Level 48. He did not commit a violent crime. He actually volunteered to enter this hellhole for a 6-month duration in exchange for an official master's degree. While others brought deadly weapons, Goreng brought a copy of the classic novel Don Quixote. He quickly realizes his mistake when he meets his elderly, cynical cellmate, Trimagesi. Trimagesi explains the harsh reality of their situation with a chilling, detached calm. There are only 3 types of people in this place: those above, those below, and those who fall. Trimagesi is a seasoned veteran of the Hole who deeply understands that survival completely overrides morality in this concrete tower. He introduces Goreng to the absolute pettiness of their daily routine. Since they are currently on Level 48, they still receive the heavily degraded leftovers of 96 people above them. Goreng is initially repulsed by the saliva-covered, half-eaten scraps on the platform and refuses to eat, but Trimagesi mocks his elite righteousness, knowing hunger will eventually break him. Trimagesi proudly shows off his own chosen luxury item, the Samurai Plus, a terrifyingly sharp, self-sharpening kitchen knife that can slice through flesh like butter. He explains the most devious rule of the facility: the temperature. Inmates are strictly forbidden from hoarding any food from the platform after it departs. If anyone attempts to hide even a single piece of bread or a stray piece of fruit in their cell, the automated system immediately retaliates by pumping extreme, lethal heat or freezing Arctic air into the room until the food is thrown down the shaft or the inmates die. This sinister mechanic forces total consumption in the moment, preventing any possible preservation or sharing with the starving people below. As the days bleed together, Goreng slowly succumbs to his primal survival instincts, eventually forcing himself to eat the disgusting scraps just to keep his body functioning. He listens to Trimagesi explain that every single month, the administrators gas the entire tower into unconsciousness and randomly reassign everyone to a completely new level. If you get lucky and wake up at the top, you live like a god. If you wake up at the bottom, you face a month of pure, unadulterated starvation. The agonizing tension peaks at the end of the month as the gas fills the room, leaving their fates entirely up to chance. When Goreng finally regains consciousness, he finds himself completely immobilized. He is heavily tied down to his concrete bed with thick, agonizingly tight fabric straps. His eyes panic-search the room until they land on Trimagesi, who is sitting quietly across the cell. They have been reassigned to Level 171. At this depth, the food platform will arrive entirely empty every single day for 30 consecutive days. Trimagesi apologized to Goreng with an eerie, clinical politeness, explaining that he bears no personal malice toward him. However, since they will receive absolutely 0 calories this month, Trimagesi must resort to cannibalism to survive. He plans to carve off precise, non-lethal strips of Goreng's flesh, allowing the wounds to heal so the meat stays fresh throughout the month. Goreng screams for help into the empty void, but his cries are met with total silence from the upper levels and mocking laughter from the lower ones. For days, Goreng lies paralyzed in fear as Trimagesi starves, slowly losing his mind to hunger. Just as Trimagesi draws his razor-sharp knife to slice into Goreng's leg, a sudden miracle occurs. A mysterious, silent woman named Maharu descends into their room on top of the food platform. Maharu is a mute woman who regularly rides the platform down through the levels every month, violently killing anyone who gets in her way, in a desperate, seemingly impossible search for her lost child. Seeing Goreng in mortal danger, Maharu fiercely attacks Trimagesi. A brutal, bloody struggle ensues, ending with Maharu slitting Trimagesi's throat. She frees Goreng, feeds him a piece of the dead man's flesh to keep him alive, and then quietly rides the platform down into the dark abyss. Goreng is left physically alive but psychologically shattered, forced to eat his former cellmate to survive. The psychological trauma of eating human flesh completely breaks Goreng's perception of reality. He begins to experience vivid, terrifying hallucinations of Trimagesi's ghost, who acts as a manifestation of Goreng's inner guilt, constantly mocking his attempts to maintain his morality. When the next month arrives, Goreng wakes up on Level 33. This is an incredibly wealthy floor compared to his previous hell, and his new cellmate is Imagiri. Imagiri is an older woman who actually worked as a low-level administrator for the system for years before voluntarily entering the hole after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. She brought her pet dog as her single item. Imagiri represents the ultimate irony of the system. She genuinely believed the facility was a benevolent center for social re-education. She brought a gentle, bureaucratic mindset to a place of absolute savagery. Every day when the food platform arrives, Imagiri carefully rations her portion and desperately tries to persuade the inmates on level 34 to do the exact same. She politely begs them to create a system of spontaneous solidarity, arguing that if every single person in the tower only eats exactly what they need to survive, the food would miraculously last all the way down to the very lowest levels. However, her polite pleas are met with extreme hostility, crude insults, and literal feces thrown up at her from the lower floor. The inmates mock her naivety, pointing out that when they were on the lower levels nobody saved food for them, so they have absolutely no intention of showing mercy now. Goreng watches her fail, realizing that polite diplomacy and corporate rhetoric are completely useless weapons against the deeply ingrained systemic greed of starving human beings. Seeing Imagiri's peaceful methods utterly fail, Goreng decides to intervene using the only language the inmates actually understand: extreme violence. He steps over to the edge of the void and screams down at level 34, threatening that if they do not listen to Imagiri and ration their food immediately, he will personally defecate on every single piece of food that descends to their level every day for the rest of the month. Because he holds the geographical advantage of being above them, his threat is instantly effective. The fear of literal contamination forces the lower level into compliance. Goreng realizes a dark truth about human nature. Solidarity cannot be requested from a position of weakness. It must be violently enforced from a position of absolute power. Despite this small victory, the system remains completely undefeated. When the next month rolls around, Goreng wakes up to a horrific sight. He is on level 202. Imagiri is hanging from the ceiling, having committed suicide out of sheer despair after realizing her life's work was a lie. Her pet dog is gone. Goreng is once again trapped on a starving floor with a corpse. The hallucinations of Trismegistai return, louder and more malicious than ever, forcing Goreng to desecrate another body to avoid starvation. He spends the month eating Imagiri's remains while reading pages of Don Quixote out loud to drown out the screaming madness in his mind. By the time the month ends, Goreng is no longer the idealistic man who entered the facility. He is a hardened, deeply traumatized survivor who understands that the tower is designed to systematically crush human empathy. When he wakes up for his final month, he finds himself on level 6, a prime position with an abundance of food. On level 6, Goreng meets his final cellmate, Bahara. Bahara is a deeply religious and athletic man who brought a thick, sturdy rope as his single item. Bahara's goal is pure and simple. He wants to use his rope to climb up to level 5, convincing the people above to help pull him out of the facility entirely. He believes in the inherent goodness of humanity. However, when the platform arrives, the wealthy inmates on level 5 trick him. They pretend to help him, encouraging him to climb, but just as he nears their ledge, they mockingly threaten to defecate on his face and drop his rope, nearly sending him falling to his death. This cruel betrayal shatters Bahara's faith in spontaneous human kindness. Goreng, inspired by the tragic deaths of Trismegistai and Imagiri, realizes that escaping individually is completely impossible. The system can only be broken if they force a massive, undeniable message back up to the high-ranking administrators on level 0. Goreng convinces a cynical Bahara to execute a radical, unprecedented plan. They will not stay on level 6. Instead, they will arm themselves with iron bars, step directly onto the food platform, and ride it all the way down through every single level of the entire tower. They will act as armed protectors of the food, violently preventing the upper levels from overeating, while systematically distributing equal rations to the starving people below. They calculate that if they can successfully preserve a single, highly delicate luxury dessert, a pristine panna cotta, all the way to the very bottom and send it back up to level 0 completely untouched, it will serve as an undeniable symbol of human resilience and systemic failure. Armed with heavy iron pipes, Goreng and Bahara begin their perilous descent on the floating platform. As they pass through the upper levels, they are met with intense confusion and immediate violence. The wealthy inmates, accustomed to consuming whatever they want without consequence, are furious that anyone is restricting their luxury. Goreng and Bahara are forced to use brutal physical force, beating back greedy inmates who try to rush the platform. They cross paths with a wise, wheelchair-bound inmate named Brambang, who acts as a brief spiritual mentor. Brambang praises their revolutionary spirit but warns them that their current methods are deeply flawed. He points out that if they simply beat people into submission, the administrators on level 0 will only see them as violent thugs, completely missing the deeper meaning of their protest. He advises them that the message needs to be elegant and pure. It is Brambang who suggests that they must select one specific, beautiful dish to protect with their lives as the icon of their message. They choose the pristine panna cotta dessert. From that moment on, the mission changes from simple food distribution to the absolute protection of the dessert. As they descend deeper into the double digits, the environment becomes increasingly hostile and filthy. The stench of human waste and decay fills the air. They witness horrific scenes of human degradation, madness, and murder. They are forced to ration the basic food strictly, fighting off desperate crowds of starving people. The physical toll on both men is immense. They are constantly battered, bruised, and bleeding, but their ideological commitment to protecting the panna cotta keeps them moving forward into the dark. As the platform drops past level 100, the situation descends into absolute madness. The air grows cold and thick with the scent of death. They are no longer dealing with greedy citizens. They are dealing with wild, starving animals driven completely insane by prolonged isolation. On these lower levels, rooms are filled with corpses, and survivors hide in the shadows, waiting to ambush the platform like predators. Goreng and Bahara are forced to fight for their lives in pitch-black darkness against multiple attackers. They are stabbed, sliced, and severely beaten, but they refuse to let anyone touch the panna cotta. During one particularly brutal encounter on a lower level, they spot Maharu, the mute woman, being viciously attacked and overwhelmed by a group of cannibalistic inmates. Forgetting their mission for a brief moment, Goreng and Bahara leap off the platform to save her. A chaotic, hyper-violent brawl erupts in the dimly lit cell. They manage to kill the attackers, but it is a Pyrrhic victory. Maharu is tragically killed in the crossfire, and both Goreng and Bahara sustain horrific, life-threatening wounds. Bahara is deeply slashed across his abdomen, bleeding profusely, while Goreng is severely concussed and losing consciousness. Weak, mangled, and deeply traumatized, they drag themselves back onto the moving platform just before it continues its descent. They are now floating deeper into the facility than anyone has ever gone before. The numbers on the walls continue to climb past 200, then 300, shattering Imagiri's original administrative claim that there were only 200 floors in total. The true, cosmic scale of the facility's cruelty is finally revealed. The platform finally grinds to a halt at level 333. The room is utterly silent, freezing cold, and shrouded in deep shadow. Goreng and Bahara are barely clinging to life, sitting in pools of their own blood. As Goreng looks around the dim room, his eyes widen in complete disbelief. Hiding under a concrete bed is a clean, well-dressed little girl. This discovery completely shatters everything Goreng thought he knew about the facility. The administrators had always strictly claimed that no one under the age of 16 was allowed inside the center. Yet here is a child surviving at the absolute bottom of hell. Goreng looks down at the panna cotta, the sacred icon they sacrificed their flesh to protect, and realizes that a piece of luxury food is completely meaningless compared to the life of a starving child. Without hesitation, Goreng overrides Bahara's weak protests and feeds the sweet panna cotta to the little girl. She devours it eagerly, her hunger finally satiated. Bahara, having spent the last of his remaining life force to complete the journey, peacefully succumbs to his massive abdominal wounds and dies on the concrete floor. Goreng is left entirely alone with the child. He realizes that the panna cotta was never the true message to the administrators. This innocent girl, surviving perfectly against all odds in the deepest, darkest depths of their bureaucratic machine, is the ultimate testament to human resilience. She is the undeniable proof that the system failed to completely destroy humanity. Goreng gently helps the little girl onto the empty food platform, preparing to send her up to level 0 as the ultimate, living message that will force the creators of the tower to confront their crimes. The food platform suddenly reaches the absolute bottom of the entire shaft, a vast, pitch-black, cavernous void located beneath level 333. The platform stops moving completely, hovering in the dark. Goreng steps off the platform with the little girl, but as he prepares to ride it back up to the surface with her, the hallucination of Trismegistai appears one final time in the darkness. The phantom gently places a hand on Goreng's shoulder, telling him with a quiet, peaceful voice that his journey is officially over. Trismegistai explains that the message itself requires no bearer. The little girl must ascend to the top completely alone, pure and untainted by the violence and corruption of the tower. Goreng looks back at his own broken, blood-stained body and realizes his cellmate is right. He has committed terrible acts, eaten human flesh, and become a monster of the system just to survive. He cannot accompany the symbol of innocence to the light. Goreng accepts his fate with a calm, stoic resignation. He steps away from the platform, disappearing into the dark shadows of the abyss to die in peace. The automated platform suddenly activates, launching upward at extreme speed, carrying the sleeping girl toward level 0. The movie ends on this highly ambiguous, deeply symbolic note. The ending is a powerful metaphor for social revolution and systemic greed. It suggests that changing a corrupt system cannot be achieved through polite bureaucracy or simple violence. True change requires absolute sacrifice, a willingness to give up your own life, and a fierce dedication to protecting the future generation. I want to hear your personal theories on this bizarre ending, so drop a comment down below letting me know if you think the little girl actually made it to the top alive, or if the entire final sequence was just a dying hallucination in Goreng's broken mind. Thank you so much for watching, thank you for supporting a new creator, and I will see you all in the very next movie.